Why is it impossible to escape from North Korea? In most parts of the world, activities such as talking, falling in love with someone or just moving around are part of everyday life and society. But this is not the case in all countries. In a democracy you can think individually and defend your rights, but for people living in authoritarian countries this is nothing more than a dream. North Korea is one of those countries where the government controls everything, including what you are entitled to according to your loyalty to the system. The government monitors the education of children, makes propaganda and uses force to define what you can say, see, hear, eat and what you are forbidden to do. If a North Korean is a threat or opposes the regime, he is punished with jail or death sentence. North Korea remains isolated from the world, yet many brave people in search of a better life have planned to flee in the hope of reaching a safe haven. Many of them have never even sat in a car before fleeing, usually speaking no language other than Korean. So how do they do it? How many manage to escape? Which countries take them in? And which organizations intervene? All this will be answered if we know a little more about the history of that country and the history of those who defect. By the 50s the economy of Korea improved significantly after being devastated by the war and the Japanese occupation. Once the Japanese control over the peninsula ceased, a leader marked the history of Asia and the world. He was known as the Eternal President. In the 50s he was one of the main responsible for the attacks that caused the Korean War. There intervened countries like the United States, Russia and international organizations such as the United Nations. These events were part of what we know as the Cold War. The armed conflict finally caused the division of the territory into two different states, South Korea and North Korea. It was established that the limit would be the 38th parallel, a line that divides the North and the South. The political career of Kim Il-sung led him to become president in 1984, and he founded the Democratic Republic of North Korea. He established the Juche ideology as an essential feature of a centralized and collectivist state. Conceived himself as a great leader and hero through an intense and effective political propaganda, isolated the country and directed all strategies towards the implementation of a Soviet-style socialist system. The propaganda strategies served the function of indoctrinating all the inhabitants. The children sang daily in schools the song of General Kim Il-sung instead of children's songs. Adults saw on their way to work huge banners with Kim Il-sung's image as a loving father or grandfather conveying love to the people. Kim Il-sung took full control of the media, disseminated information to spread hatred against the US and any ideology different from communism. There was no choice of thought for the people living in North Korea. Kim Il-sung imposed his ideology as a way of life. The crisis and famine in North Korea and its aftermath. Decades after the end of the most notorious war conflicts of the 20th century, the economic consequences in North Korea began. Its main communist ally, the Soviet Union, was on its way to dissolution and did not have the economic resources to deal with problems in Asia. Kim Il-sung died on July 8, 1994. He was a much-loved leader in his country, and when he died he left his son Kim Jong-il in charge. The news of his death caused a great mourning in North Korea. People were crying inconsolably the departure of their hero while he lived in an unprecedented crisis. The truth is that North Korea made an important investment in armament. It has a nuclear program, and this was reflected in the deterioration of all other industries. The isolation of the country will be so absolute that it only traded a little with China, Vietnam, Cuba and the recently founded Russia. All of the above added to the collapse of agricultural activity, famines that killed thousands of its inhabitants. Natural disasters occurred and there was no medical care capacity for disease control. Death and starvation became a daily reality. Some of the sectors that escaped at that time said that they had to collect herbs, crush them to powder and boil them to survive, and even rumors spread that in some villages and poor areas people were resorting to cannibalism. By the end of the 1990s, an estimated 240,000 to 3.5 million people had died from starvation or poor conditions. The reasons for escaping North Korea. The majority of North Koreans currently work in the country's rudimentary agriculture. It is certainly difficult to make progress in a state where every enterprise is codependent on the government apparatus. There are still problems of malnutrition and widespread poverty in North Korea. Although each person who leaves the country has a different story to tell, some have in common the weariness of living in a state that severely controls the lives of its citizens. By the 90s many realized that other countries were advancing, and although the North Korean doctrine defended its Juche ideology of a supposedly self-sufficient economy, the contrast with other countries was noticeable, especially its neighboring South Korea's capitalist and liberal system. Today in North Korea there is no internet for individual use, there is no freedom of press or television, the media that exists is controlled by the government. There is no production of magazines or other sources of entertainment different from the official ones. The historical separation between North and South Korea. The Korean War resulted in two mutually repudiating states. In 1957 the armed conflict ended with an armistice rather than a peace agreement. North Korea became permanently isolated, and by 2007 it was estimated that around 750,000 people were still separated from their families. For the defectors, South Korea is a sister country where they can speak their native language, a place where the desire to come seems almost instinctive. South Korea accepts all Koreans as citizens between the border of the two countries. While North Koreans were suffering from starvation and only saw Soviet-style stories of war and love of the motherland in South Korea, other types of entertainment such as romance novels were developed and modern industrial goods and services were created. Audiovisuals with topical romance plots had an effect on people whose style of life was not as modern as that of the North Koreans. The present day, it seems, the means of population control of the youth are stricter on this issue, and there are severe punishments in schools for playing music or movies made in South Korea if you get caught in North Korea with movies or films made in South Korea. North Korea has threatened not to abide by the armistice agreed with South Korea, so they maintain a conflict that threatens violent results. How North Koreans get to South Korea. The inter-Korean land border is undoubtedly the most difficult to cross, and its 250 kilometers of length between the north and south is guarded by military. Between both borders there is a demilitarized strip of 4 kilometers wide, the famous 38th parallel. The coast of the peninsula is also heavily guarded with motion detection systems. It is not possible to get there without overstepping the military presence. If it were possible, it would take a swim of about 6 hours to get to the South Korean coast. Almost no one in North Korea can afford a boat, let alone pay enough bribes to let them sail away. Some experts believe that 60% of North Korea's entire military force is positioned on its border to prevent a possible invasion from the south. North Korean soldiers have strict orders to attack anyone who tries to cross in or out without state permission. There are also landmines in the area. Although South Korea openly welcomes North Korean defectors, it is difficult for them to cross from one side to the other without generating armed conflict. Most of the defectors escape across the border into China, and if they wanted to reach South Korea, a long journey through Vietnam, Laos and Thailand would probably await them. Escape through China. The northeastern border with China is the longest and therefore the least difficult to circumvent. It is about 1,416 kilometers long. However, on this border a large number of barbed wire fences have been built and security cameras have also been installed with which guards from both countries constantly monitor the area. In contrast to South Korea and democratic Western countries, China adapts to the migration policies of the North Korean regime does not grant the people who escape the status of refugees. It considers them economic migrants and has agreements to return them to North Korea. The truth is that China seems hostile to a defector from the North Korean system. There they do not speak the same language, and if they are captured a tragic end awaits them. So for example, the plan of many women was to escape to China with the help of smugglers who promised them employment and a better life. Almost 4 out of 5 people who escape from North Korea are women between 20 and 40 years old. Unfortunately, many of them are women. Unfortunately, many of them fell into the clutches of human trafficking criminals, some of whom sold them to Chinese men as wives and others forced them into sex work. There are cases of women who, after being sold to a new husband in China and even having children in that country, were still afraid of being returned to the North Korean regime and locked up in prison, which is why even years after their arrival in China, they continue to insist and search for ways to escape to South Korea or to any other country. 2/3 of the North Koreans arriving in China do so through Hamgyong province, which is in the far north, crossing the Tumen River, which is smaller and shallower than the other border river. However, since 2016 it is believed that the order of the military in North Korea is to shoot on sight anyone who tries to escape through this means. If a North Korean arrives in China, he must remain hidden and not reveal his identity until he reaches a third country or embassy. North Korea's subway railroad. Unsung heroes. Some unsung heroes helped when the international community failed to protect North Korean refugees in China. Citizens from all over Asia established the North Korea Subway Railroad, an organization dedicated to protecting North Koreans on their escape route. Had safe reception sites, escape routes and any other escape logistics, and an iconic and mysterious person who has contributed extraordinarily to this cause goes by the pseudonym Stephen King. The decline of defectors and the current outlook. From what has been seen, the current government of Kim Jong-un has the upper hand in controlling the citizens, or at least they have controlled their free transit. He is a politician who is more emotional than his predecessors. He tries to connect with the people and maintains an anti-capitalist and statist discourse. Political propaganda and indoctrination seem to continue to be effective in front of the masses, as North Koreans do not have access to media. They do not know that their situation is precarious in relation to other countries. 43% of North Koreans suffer from malnutrition, indicated the United Nations in a 2018 report. The control of the media manages to make defectors invisible or at least report their life outside North Korea as a disgrace to be avoided. There are currently some limited possibilities for illegal jobs abroad. There are more legal North Korean workers in Chile, Russia and the Middle East than in past years. However, the people selected for these jobs have to have a good knowledge of the North Korean situation, and they are not aware of their precarious situation in relation to other countries. For the rest of the people who suffer terrible living conditions and violation of human rights, it is hardly feasible to make an escape. This would imply an effort in economic terms. In recent years there are more military personnel on the border and there are strong penalties for failures to contain defectors. Only 2.5% of those who have clandestinely left the North have military careers. Lyon's former ambassador to North Korea in the United Kingdom, he is the highest-ranking military officer who has defected. The truth is that the official policy has been to make it possible or extremely difficult for people to leave. Now the costs for an escape operation are higher. During 2008 it was thought that $50 would be enough to bribe a guard in an escape plan. Now between $3,000 and $6,000 are required because of the serious reprisals that the person involved could face. To reach South Korea, which is only 500 kilometers away spatially, can become a clandestine journey of more than 4,300 kilometers on bus routes, motorbikes, taxis and even walking through mountains or deserts. The total cost of the trip can cost a defector around $15,000. Kilometers by bus routes, motorcycle cabs and even walking through mountains or deserts. The total cost of the trip can cost a defector around $15,000. Few people in North Korea can collect and dispose of such amounts of cash. In 2016 only 1,418 people managed to leave North Korea. The average in previous years was around 2,800. Now the North Korean military seems to have indications to shoot on sight any subject who tries to escape. This has been proven in events in the city of Najeong, Hamgyong province. One of the reasons preventing North Koreans from moving up is the application of the Sun Boom concept, which means family status has to do with loyalty to the system and affects the members of each family. It is possible for a defector's family to suffer consequences for him. They may be sent to concentration camps or be excluded from work and food benefits. Ultimately, many family members and friends were separated when the North Korea was divided. Others could not bear to live under extreme poverty. Others simply yearned for greater expression and a life in a democratic society. Escaping North Korea entails high costs. Both economic and living consequences are lethal. Others could not bear to live in extreme poverty. Others simply yearn for greater freedom of expression and a life in a democratic society. Escaping from North Korea involves high costs both financially and in life. The consequences of failure are lethal. The danger faced by loved ones is real and adaptation to an external system can be difficult. However, many aspire to reach a safe place that will give them freedom. We hope you found this video useful. If you have anything to add, please share it with us in the comments section. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share the video. Thanks.